untamable alien girl bit the merchant's finger, until one human bought her, and tamed her. The bazaar on Kestrel station smelled like engine grease, sweet spice, and rain caught in old vents. Between stalls hung with glow lanterns and coils of cable, a ring of onlookers had gathered around a cage no higher than a man's hip. Inside crouched a girl with storm-gray skin and a mane of pale quills. Her wrists were cuffed. A dull collar rested on the line of her throat. The merchant poked a baton through the bars, sneering for the crowd's benefit. "She's feral," he proclaimed, leaning closer. "Watch the teeth." She lunged. The crowd flinched. The merchant's gloved hand reared back, a crescent of teeth marks blossoming red through the synth leather. The girl hissed, pupils blown wide, jaw set like a trap that had learned to bite the hunter. The station's noises, announcements, laughter, the thud of cargo, poured over her and she trembled as though drowning in sound. Arin Vale watched from the edge of the ring. He was a freight captain whose ship had more patched seams than original hull, a man who'd hauled relief kits and smuggled hope when bureaucracy forgot entire worlds. He saw bruises where others saw profit. He stepped forward. "How much?" he asked, voice level. The merchant snorted, binding his finger with a strip torn from his sleeve. "For that, danger pay. She's untamable." Arin's gaze met the girl's, briefly because she looked away, braced for blows that had become a language. He spoke softly, more to her than to the merchant. "You don't have to be," he said. The collar clicked off the scale at the counter. Arin paid. The merchant slid him a slim tablet of ownership codes and a key for the cuffs, throwing in a laugh like rust scraping. "Don't bring her back," he said. "You'll get no refund on blood." Arin knelt by the cage. The girl's breath came fast. He did not reach in. He set a canteen within arm's length and backed away. "My name is Arin," he said. "I'm not your keeper. When you're ready, we'll go. You'll be safe on my ship." The girl's quills flattened warily. She sniffed the canteen, then drank as if expecting pain to leap from the water. When she finished, she pressed herself into the far corner and shut her eyes. Arin waited. The bazaar flowed around them, strangers passing like weather. After a time she cracked one eye open and measured the space to the door. She tested the cuff chain, too short for a sprint, long enough to crawl. Arin held up the key where she could see it and placed it on the deck between them. He slid the codes tablet beside it. She stared at the key until her gaze steadied, then stretched, took it and turned her back to him, bearing the lock with a defiance that said, "I will accept this thing and nothing else." The cuffs fell away. They moved through the crowd like two moons in a crowded sky, never touching. At the docking ring, Arin palmed open the hatch to the Lark. The girl halted on the threshold, nostrils flaring at the ozone-thick smell of a starship at rest. She cast a glance down the corridor, a glance back at the station. The decision tugged like gravity. "Food," Arin said, stepping inside first so she would not feel led. "And quiet." She followed. The Lark was small. 2 bunks, a galley big enough for hope and tea, a cockpit that hummed in a key the girl could feel in her bones. Arin pointed out the head, the emergency release, the kits in the wall. He showed her the lever that opened the outer hatch. He didn't hide the exits. He cooked. The food, spiced algae over warmed flatbread, filled the galley with a scent that softened the steel. She hovered in the doorway, watching his hands. When he set a plate on the table and retreated, she approached like a creature in a snare circle, ready to bolt if the ground clicked. She ate fast, then slower, then looked up. "I'm Arin," he repeated, tapping his chest. "Arin." Her throat worked. "Kyri," she said, consonants flexing around an accent like wind through copper reeds. "Kyri," he echoed, as if saying it might anchor her better than any chain. That night, when station lights dimmed and false night rolled over the ring, Kyri paced the Lark's narrow corridor. The hum of the reactor set her teeth on edge. The memory of the cage crawled along the walls. She stopped at the cockpit, where the stars beyond the viewport swam in their glass pond. Arin sat at the controls, boots off, chair tilted back. He didn't look at her, only reached over and dimmed the panel until the starlight was the brightest thing in the room. "My ship has one rule," he said. "No cages. Not made of metal. Not made of fear." Kyri's jaw tightened. Fear wasn't a cage. Fear was the teeth you grew when the world tried to swallow you. She folded into the co-pilot's seat and watched the stars until sleep found her in pieces. 3 days out, the Lark crossed the shadow of a pirate dragnet. Sirens flashed. The ship jolted, snagged like fabric on a nail. Kyri sprang upright, quills flared, breath ragged. In the narrow of the corridor, she hit the wall, then the floor, then Arin's arms. No, not his arms, because he didn't touch her. He crouched far enough away that the air between them stayed hers. "Kyri," he said as the hull shuddered. "I need your help." She spat the word back. "Help. You want the beast to bite for you. I want the pilot who survived a merchant's trap to show me how to slip one more snare," he said. He tipped his chin toward a maintenance hatch above their heads. "There's a manual release on the starboard anchors. The conduits are too tight for me." Trust was not a door. It was a series of ledges over a long drop. Kyri lifted the hatch. Hot air washed her face. She wriggled into the conduit, fingers feeling for switches she had learned long before the merchant and his cage. The ship sang around her. Somewhere below, Arin's hands danced across the controls, trusting a stranger in his bones. "Now," she called. The Lark bucked, the dragnet screaming as one anchor snapped free. Arin threw the thrusters wide, then killed them in a heartbeat, going limp as debris, slipping between lines like a fish playing dead in a fisherman's hands. Kyri found the second release and yanked. The ship shivered, then floated, free. They drifted in silence until the pirate grid receded like a bad dream. Arin's laughter came soft, unbelieving. "You did it." Kyri dropped out of the conduit, landing cat-quiet. Her hands shook. Arin noticed and said nothing, only handed her a cup. Tea was sweet. It steadied her. "You said I am not a cage," she murmured, staring into the cup. "But I have been one to myself." He shook his head. "Not a cage. Armor. You can set it down when you choose." Back at Kestrel station, the merchant saw them coming and paled. Kyri walked ahead of Arin, shoulders squared, collar gone. The ring of onlookers gathered again, hungry for spectacle. The merchant raised both hands. "No trouble," he said quickly. "No refunds either." Kyri stepped closer until the crowd held its breath. The merchant's pulse leaped in his throat. She could smell it. She lifted her hand, the same hand that had bitten, and set it light as wind against his cheek. He flinched. She didn't strike. She didn't need to. She turned to the crowd. "This man called me untamable," she said, voice low but carrying. "But I was only unbroken." Arin held up the tablet of ownership codes and, with a few taps, transferred their last echo into Kyri's name, and then dissolved them. The screen chimed, brighter than any bell. "No one owns you," he said. "Not anymore. Not ever again." Kyri looked at him, at the crowd, at the cage still sitting behind the stall like a shadow that hadn't realized it was noon. She stepped past it without looking back. They left the station with the Lark's engines humming a friendly song. In the cockpit, Kyri stood by the viewport, fingers resting on the glass as if she could feel the cold between stars. Arin slid into the pilot's chair and keyed in a course with room for detours. "You said you needed a pilot," she said, a sideways smile touching her mouth. "I said I needed help," he countered. "Seems I got a partner." Kyri exhaled, slow. The armor she wore lived in her bones. It would not be peeled in a day. But she could shift it. She could set it down piece by piece. She touched her own throat where the collar had been, feeling only the beat of her life. "No cages," she said. "No cages," Arin agreed. The Lark turned her nose toward the dark. Trust was not a door, but it was a path, and together they set their feet upon it. Behind them, the bazaar's clamor faded to memory. Ahead, a scatter of bright worlds waited, untamed and open, and no one, ever again, held the key to Kyri but Kyri herself. Kyri walked through the bazaar not as a captive but as something new, something free. The crowd that once jeered now parted in silence, watching the gray-skinned girl who had once bitten and snarled at every hand. She no longer crouched behind bars. Her steps were steady, her head held high. The merchant who had sold her tried to shrink into his stall, his bandaged finger trembling at the sight of her. Kyri stood before him, the old chain of fear pulling tight inside her chest. For a heartbeat, she wanted to bare her teeth again, to show him the wildness he had tried to crush. Instead she lifted her hand, not to strike but to touch his cheek, light as breath. The man flinched, but she only whispered, "You called me untamable. You were wrong. I was unbroken." Behind her, Arin Vale stepped forward and dissolved the ownership codes, erasing the last claim anyone held over her. The tablet chimed, and in that single sound, a cage fell apart forever. Kyri turned her back on the merchant and walked away, each step a vow she would never again live bound. The cage still sat behind the stall, but it looked smaller now, like a shadow that had lost its weight. When she boarded the Lark, the hum of its engines no longer frightened her. She stood by the viewport, watching the stars scatter like spilled diamonds. Arin leaned in the pilot's chair, smiling. "You said you needed a pilot," she murmured. "I said I needed help," he corrected softly. "Seems I found a partner." Her quills eased, her armor set aside for the first time. "No cages," Kyri said. "No cages," Arin answered. Together they turned toward the waiting stars, free at last.